everybody. Welcome to a great DynamicsCon event. We're excited to be here and present, and thrilled for everyone to take time out of their busy day to learn more about Dynamics GP today. Our topic today is becoming a master in using your GP product. And hopefully at the end of our session, after some Q&A, we can hand everybody a master's degree in what they learned today. I have a co-presenter with me today, Ms. Deb Sletmoen, owner and president of Implementation Specialists. And my name is Kurt Quiggle, and I'm the director of sales and marketing. Deb, you should say hi.
Hi, everyone. It's Deb Sletmoen. So happy that we can be here showing you some of these amazing features of Dynamics GP. And of course, we are super excited to be presenting, and thanks so much to our amazing host, DynamicsCon, for giving us a little bit of session time. Right, Kurt?
Absolutely. And Deb will be helping me with Q&A at the end of our presentation today. Our topics today are going to be revenue and expense deferrals, fixed assets, intercompany transactions, and HR placeholders.
Kurt, you've got a lot to cover in only a short time. I'm excited about your topics because these are ones that we find a lot of companies really are wanting to do, but just didn't even realize that they were available to them.
For sure. They're often overlooked, and there's a lot of value there. And the first one out of the gate is revenue and expense deferrals. Some of our colleagues call it RED. The first time I heard it, I didn't know what in the world were they talking about. And we're not going to go into great depth again because of time. So feel free to jot down any questions, and we can get that at the end of our session. But we're going to cover a little bit on setup, how a deferral profile helps with data entry, maybe some ideas for typical uses, and if we think of it, maybe Deb and I will think of some of the crazy things we've seen this used for as well.
Exactly.
So deferral setup is really a quite simple screen. It's also easy to get to in your financial module under setup, the word deferral. We click on that and the deferral setup window opens. Audit trail code is prefix of the transactions as they land in the general ledger. Our next journal entry number is recorded here as well related to these transactions. And there are some typical settings as we're familiar with in GP, some items we can select posting through to GL. If we're familiar with using GP, we know that means it will go all the way through to the GL. I think the others where it's important to bring up at least a point here is the difference on our posting methods, whether that is balance sheet or profit and loss. And it's really how the transaction interacts with GL, whether it is 2 general ledger accounts interacting or 5. And we'll talk a little more on how each of those interact as well. I like to always leave the override turned on. Deb, you may say that other companies would base that on profile, but I like to give my users the ability to make some changes.
Have that flexibility, right? Depending upon your security and how you like to work within those specific boundaries, right?
Absolutely. And next, we'll just transition into what a profile is. And a deferral profile is where we can preset how we want the system to create these deferral entries. And we'll look at these in product so you can see a little bit of the variability there. But again, this is to speed our data entry so that the accounts being used and where they're going to pull is already predetermined.
Sorry, Kurt, it's me. You know me.
Yes.
I always have questions, and I know our users are saving all their questions for the end. But on this one, Kurt, do we need to do an install? Do our users need, if they don't see this, they should maybe think about maybe a tiny bit of an install may be needed, right? So just to clarify, if you don't have this on your system today, it is part of your GP, but may need just a tiny bit of an install, right?
It's yes. If you do not see it, and I'll show you when we pull GP up where you should be finding it, it is possible there a little bit of an install or a product add might need to be done. And I failed to mention, now that you got me to pull back one screen, that this is the balance sheet example where we have 2 GL accounts in play. And this is a P&L example where we have 5 accounts in play. And it's important to note that, you know, each of those accounts are. The first account is typically used for posting the revenue or the expense. The second account is when the deferral is applied, and it can be the same as the original account. Balance sheet account is number 3, and that is the deferral amount happening. Number 4 is also a balance sheet account for when the deferral is recognized. And number 5 is the P&L account for when it is recognized. And sometimes we see that being the same account as number 2 or number 1. So let's take a look in Dynamics GP and just see what those windows look like in real life. And again, very straightforward. When we're in Dynamics GP, in the financial series, under setup, there's our link for deferrals and deferral profiles. And as Deb said, if you're not seeing those, it's very possible we just need to do a real simple add product and add that feature. Again, clicking on deferrals, we see that typical setup window, the ability to toggle how you want sales series to handle it, how you want purchasing series to be handled.
So Kurt, for me, I'm typically thinking, you know, when I get customers started with this, my biggest thing is starting them off with a simple balance sheet type, you know, like a prepaid insurance, any of their prepaids, because the auditors love the reports that come from the deferred expenses. Okay. So it's probably one of my favorites, and getting them started with balance sheet, 2 accounts, very simple, a prepaid balance sheet to an expense, and away they go. And once they get that part going, it's easy for them to understand the other method.
Absolutely. And then, like you said, the profit and loss is a little more complicated, and adds that extra layer of detail, would you not say, Deb, in how things post? And profiles are really where, for a particular type of transaction, where we can name that transaction something meaningful, and then choose which module it's going to occur in. And notice when we pick these subledgers, we also have the distribution that is going to be utilized in the setup. Again, we can predetermine our posting accounts, our calculation methods, whether that's how many days in a period, equal periods. If we did 12 months, we could divide it equally, or some miscellaneous combination thereof. I think I have a couple already set up here that we could take a quick peek at. Again, here is that screenshot that you already saw in the deck, where we've set up one for payables management to defer the purchase. And in this case, it's going to be just 60 days in one period. So we're just going to defer it for 2 months, basically. I think that covers that. And again, if you have some questions on how that all works and looks, we can cover that after our session. So let's move on. Fixed assets. Again, a 40-minute session. We could burn all of that and then some on fixed assets, couldn't we, Deb?
Well, you know, fixed assets is one of my favorites. So yes, we could spend a lot of time here. The thing that I find with fixed assets in GP is that even if people have that CPA, that tax professional that's managing all of their assets, Kurt, right? They still can use fixed assets because they can add in so much information. You know, I want to just track computers. I want to track keys. I want to track vehicles.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yep.
Those big things, little things that somebody's got to keep track of. Where am I tracking up? Right? So, but I don't want to, you know, Kurt, I don't want to do the depreciation side. I leave that to the professionals, right? If I wanted to, definitely could, because it's so easy to be able to work with. So definitely, I know you're going to tell them lots more about all that's available to them in fixed assets.
Well, for sure. We're going to try to just cover a couple of little details if we were to do fixed assets in GP. You know, posting in detail. Over time, we've all come to appreciate posting things in detail instead of one big lump sum, right? We can actually figure out which asset is causing us some problems. Notice I have user-defined fields underlined. That really, we're going to reinforce that topic that Deb brought up. there's more to fixed assets than depreciating assets. And then I want to just point out a few other fields where we can store some additional information as well. Manufacturer, serial number, model number. And then maybe, since intercompany is also a topic during this session, we'll talk about intercompany transfers. So in our fixed asset company setup window, there are 2 checkboxes for posting in detail and resetting history in detail. And Deb, right, we find great value in utilizing detail whenever possible, correct?
Yes, exactly. And understanding that if those options are on or off and what that means is definitely a valuable Kurt all by itself.
Yep, and notice the highly professional arrow pointing at auto-generate next asset ID. So often we just want to grab next number because within fixed assets, we do have a place to put a tag number. So the asset ID does not need to match our tag number. And then it's nice to just turn on, next ID. And then, as you'll see, when we roll further forward here and we start talking about classes, we can actually have our asset ID increment by class as well. So looking at an asset ID, we know specifically what class it is a member of. Not as many features in class setup within fixed assets, but it's still so valuable to be able to roll down that account group and possibly your insurance class ID as well across everything within that class. But where the magic really is that Deb and I are talking about is user data. Distribution is my background. However, when we look at inventory, I wish we had this many user-defined fields and extra areas for information about an inventory item as we have for fixed assets. And these can be configured, they can be named, they can be added to reports, they can be added to smart lists within GP. They can be lookup lists so that we don't have to worry about a user typing in a bad value when we're using them for reports. And again, we'll take a quick peek in product at how that looks, but it definitely gives us that extra information that Deb was referring to, where we really want to be able to track when a very expensive piece of lab equipment was last certified. We can add a date field and do such things. It's very powerful. The other point I always like to make is always follow the blue arrow. If nothing else today, you learn that, by gosh, whenever you see a little blue arrow on the screen, click on it. It can never get you in trouble, but often takes you somewhere, special. So here we can see that from the manufacturer's name, clicking the blue arrow, we can actually add the serial number, model number, and warranty date also associated with that asset. And again, highly reportable.
Yeah, and Kurt, don't forget about your doc attach here on fixed assets.
Oh,
how many times do we have to find the asset paperwork for a warranty claim, a return? And if you're tracking it all with doc attached to the asset, you have it when you need it.
Absolutely. We'll quickly demonstrate where I set up a user-defined field called color. And you notice here on Smart List that it actually is pulling the color. Model number and serial number is coming from the manufacturer field. So again, great place to store extra information related to your assets. And we'll take a quick peek at that as well in GP. And we are going to go to, again, in our setup, let's look at our company setup for fixed assets. And this is where we find our user-defined fields. And within them, of course, we can give them a name, such as I did here with the word color. I chose this one because it was a longer format. And then if we use list for valid values, and we click on that list, this is where we can actually pre-fill the list with values our users can pick from the lookup. So again, we don't have typos unless, of course, I filled it out. Then there's still a really good possibility there may be a typo. That's the second test of the presentation. Find all of Kurt's typos. It's all good. And again, these can be named however we want them to be named, whether this is date. Oh gosh, I'm being totally uncreative today. Date 1, So sorry. and, and again, picking that date format.
Even something simple like a last service date, if you wanted to, right? Those kinds of things.
And that was a prior list value. I couldn't have a list value and a date. So you can't have both, but one or the other. So just a quick little reminder from Microsoft that I was trying to set up something incorrect. Anything else you can think of on that, Deb? I think you did well there, which would lead us into intercompany transactions. And here we really, I think, again, this really comes down to one of those shortcut areas where we can pre-configure the system, make interactions between our buying something or entering a journal entry and actually affect our sister company. And it's available in general ledger and accounts payable. And Deb, I didn't miss any, did I?
Out of the box, no, definitely not. And this is one area that a lot of customers really are very, I'm going to say, timid about doing this. So what happens is, Kurt, they do transactions in one company and then they jump over to the other company and they do another set of transactions. And I'm going to tell you, if you take a couple minutes and try it out, it is definitely worth the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, we're really covering those topics today that have a lot of bang for the buck. And when we think about setup in GP, those are those daunting tasks we all went through when we deployed the product. And really the topics that Deb and I are talking about today are some that have very forgiving setup windows, as well as very simple setup windows. And we'll cover that. So within intercompany transactions, there's a single window where we set the relationship between our companies. However many companies we want to interact with, we can only interact with 2 at a time. But within the setup window, we set that due from account between the originating company and the destination company. And those accounts are utilized to create a balancing entry. So if I'm paying a bill in or Fabricam for Kronos, it will create an opposing entry in the other company that balances. And looking at that in the general ledger, really let's take a quick step back. We'll take that step back. Once it's configured, there's really nothing else to do other than now when you're in a general ledger window or an accounts payable window, the intercompany checkbox should be lit so that you can actually mark it, right? So look for the checkbox. Once that checkbox has been marked, we also light up another field in our journal entry window where we can choose the company ID or that's the right word, company ID for the interaction that we're going to make. In this case, I did something pretty silly. I moved cash between Fabricam and cash in Kronos. And in doing so, I entered 2 lines. Pretty simple. But when I run my edit list, I get more than 2 lines, right? So again, intercompany is doing a lot of that legwork for us. And Deb, when that processes into the other company, into the sister company, it just creates a general ledger batch, correct?
Correct, right. So it has to have a batch in order for it to work, right? Yep. And you're going to see straight GP is going to leave it in that batch process for you. Okay.
Correct. Okay. Payables, this is a little messier slide, but again, we're really, after we've set it up, we see that intercompany checkbox is available to us to mark. Nothing else on that transaction window has any indication whatsoever that I'm going to do an intercompany transaction until I drill into my distributions. Once I'm in my distribution window, now once again, I've got another column that I can select records for where it is my company ID. Again, I wanted to call out just briefly that the transaction type where intercompany will function must be a purchase type, finance charge, freight, miscellaneous, or a unit. I've done this where I've actually goofed and thought I was going to get an intercompany and I didn't because again, I had the wrong type in my window and posted forward. And then I did not see the correct accounts in my edit list.
Definitely set up your test companies and try this in your test companies, right, Kurt? Like everything that we do as we're starting a new module.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I jumped ahead a slide. This was a surprise. We're going to go back. So bad. I missed my cue to get back into GP. Let's do that and let's look at these.
I think the setup on this is always the toughest for people, Kurt, when they're looking at that intercompany setup, the do to, do from, setting it up, thinking about it both directions. And really, when you set it up and you start looking at your transactions, it either makes sense or it doesn't. If it doesn't, go back to your setup.
Absolutely. Well said. And often in demos, right, we don't maybe name our accounts the greatest. We just grab a couple of accounts and people are looking on the screen and trying to make sense of what we're demonstrating. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense because that isn't the account I would use, right? That used to trip me up all the time. I'd go to an event, I'd watch something really interesting, I'd get the slide deck and I'd be like, that account doesn't make any sense to me. And it usually doesn't, because when we're doing a demo, we may just grab two accounts because we're just really talking about that functionality. We're not talking about a customer's specific accounting, which can definitely trip us up. This one's a little trickier to find, right? Where we set up that intercompany transaction. We would assume financials, but it is not there. Under administration, or if you're old school like me, it would be tools, setup, system, and intercompany. Okay, that's navigation old school. And I believe, Deb, am I missing it? If I'm in my admin window setup, it should be here. There it is, intercompany. So again, pretty straightforward, but this is as simple as it gets. We set it up based on whichever company is the source company, what is our destination company, and then if my transaction is originating in or Fabricam, which is the company I'm in now, and we can always tell the company we're in based on the database indicator after our window name. But again, from the originating company, I did try to choose better accounts. Deb, am I in the right ballpark here?
You are. You're, really each company is going to have their own types of accounts and their own chart of accounts. But I do think, Kurt, you're getting it.
Okay. Well, you've been teaching me for a long time. Sooner or later, it's got to rub off. And the inverse is also true then. So we're going from Fabricam to Kronos or 3. And if I were to go the other direction, again, we set it up virtually the same way. Here, maybe I wasn't quite as clean on my accounts, but again, they're in the right range. So my accountants in the room aren't going, what did this guy do? But anyway, along those lines, I had a question, Deb, and other people will probably have questions that they can throw in the chat and we can take questions after our session. But this little bugger right here, when do we mark that? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. I was going to ask you earlier and I absolutely forgot.
Kurt, on that one, like I tell all of my users, if you click on it, hit your F1 key, pull up the full functioning help screens and take a look at what it says there. And really, for anything that you're doing, an F1, if you don't know what a single field is going to be, go to your field selection and you're going to see it there as well. Okay.
Absolutely. Fabulous. Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
So once we've set it up, it is really done at that point. From there, again, when we're in our transaction entry screens, whether that is in general ledger, and again, I said, look for that checkbox. Now I'm one release down, Deb, and I should have updated, because when I mark this, my paste button goes away.
It's okay, Kurt. Next release, you'll have it, right?
Next, one more service pack, and when I mark that, my paste button will still be lit. So, but at this point, when we're creating that, again, as Deb said, we do want to keep these in a batch. We're going to test intercompany. Can't type and talk at the same time. It's all good.
Oh,
And
Kurt,
again,
don't
yes,
forget about those two amazing user-defined fields you have right there that, you haven't started using yet, Kurt.
I know, and I didn't give them a name. So one more call out for extra information so we can report on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we can actually report on those fields if we want to. Fabulous, Deb. Thank you.
Yep.
And again, by default, since I'm in Fabricam, as I add my first line of a distribution, it is going to pull Fabricam in as my company ID. Again, picking any account. My example on screen was, again, I used cash to cash. Why not, right? And Deb, don't scold me. I know we could do something different in banking, right? But
nope, you're fine.
All good. And here again, I can choose that other company and where do I want to put those monies. And when I'm hitting that lookup, it's kind of interesting. Deb, this is my other company, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is, because you notice at the top it says company 3 right there at the top.
Yep.
And blue bar is followed across.
Yep. Whopping $100 back and forth between them. And at that point, if we were to print an edit list, we're going to see 4 distributions instead of 2 if I did everything correctly. And how about we save it and we go print it from the batch?
Perfect.
It should have saved.
One thing, Kurt, I always tell people here is remember your doc attach for journal entries. Right now, as they're going through audit, they're probably going through their journal entries, trying to get all their backup paperwork, their work papers together. Don't forget doc attach on those journal entries. They're so critical. So it saves you so much time, especially at year end or audit when you're trying to put everything back together. Why you did that entry, what was the reasoning, what was the makeup, can all go into that doc attach feature as well. Ooh, perfect.
Absolutely. That's that we were a success. Mm-hmm. Again, simple, very simple setup. I can see this helping a lot in quite a few of candidates that I can think of. I think we'll skip on the accounts pay side. Again, very similar structure. Let's roll forward because, I mentioned intercompany transfers of fixed assets when we were back in fixed assets, and I didn't forget. I just thought we'd talk about it during intercompany. So within that, again, I want to pop back into fixed assets just briefly so we can look at that. Again, in our financial series, fixed assets, and there is an intercompany transfer feature. So we have a sister company, whatever it happens to be, we can transfer product assets between the two. And here we're transferring to, this would be our destination company. And what are we moving? We can pick an asset, the big automobile. And then what type of transfer we're doing, whether we're doing an exchange back and forth, we're selling it, other, etc. And again, the transfer type doesn't change calculations. Oh, I might double check that. But again, it is a way to understand what we did. Yeah, because reset would reset it. Yep. Again,
book might be your best choice there, Kurt.
Yes, absolutely. Move it at net book value. Mm-hmm. And then we can assign our class, we can assign our account group in the destination company and click transfer. What happens at that point? Well, we also had one more option here. We could let it create a new asset ID in the other company utilizing whatever rules have been set up there, rather than just moving it over with our structure from this company, because it could be different. It would then retire the asset in Fabricam and create the asset, put it on the books in Kronos or 3, my database name 3, and would be ready to add to the GL the next time I ran my GL integration, correct? And anything else there on fixed assets, on integrations, anything you want to circle back on, Deb, that I missed?
Nope. I think, Kurt, the big thing on those for both fixed assets and deferred revenue, they both require the install, right?
Yes.
Small little bit of an install, right? You may also have to even turn those modules on under registration if you haven't gone in and turned them on, okay? So don't be discouraged if you look at your system and say, I just don't have them, right? They may be there. You may just have to turn them on and and get your users started with them. Okay, they're not meant to be giant implementations. They can be very low key as far as getting those pieces set up and running, especially deferred revenue and expense. I have a lot of my controllers right now will say, I've waited for beginning of year just to make it easy, right? I'm coming off spreadsheets and I'm going over to having everything electronic automation, right? And that is really a key piece. And the reporting that comes out of both fixed assets and deferred revenue for auditors, if you've got audit that, they want to see everything generated by the system, both of those modules do a great job. Intercompany specifically, as far as the reports that are coming out, you're getting, again, not two sets of entries to have to really dig into. You're having one with a full trail as it coming across to your offset company. Okay.
Absolutely. And, back to that deferral, right? We've seen some pretty interesting things done with deferrals as well. A company buys a car in June to use as a giveaway in let's say August, they can actually defer that utilizing that P&L process, put it into inventory while it's sitting on the grass out front on display, and then ultimately move it as a marketing expense at time of giveaway. So there's, again, you got to think about what the product can do for you and how you can utilize it. And that takes us to our last topic. And we've got to take a couple of minutes to bring that up. And HR placeholders.
Yep.
So HR placeholders. This is when the marketing guy, me, gets a brief description together, hands it off to the team, and literally in my description there was the word placeholder next to HR because I thought I wanted to dig into HR and talk about all of the really cool things we can track in HR. Even if we don't want to run payroll, we can keep track of people's certifications. We could keep track of whether or not they were vaccinated for something. We could keep track of driver's licenses. Deb, the gamut is very broad. And I hadn't come up with a name for it yet. And I didn't know if I'd have enough time to cover it. So I had put it in there, and you know what? That director of marketing handed it off, and lo and behold, they did their magic, made my description look so fabulous that when they sent it back, I said, you know what? I'm sure you guys did great. Just post it. Here I am, and I have to cover what I put in my description. But this was fabulous that we got a chance to present these topics. And again, time for a question and answer is now. Definitely we'll go through anything that you've sent in the chat. And it was a privilege to be a presenter for DynamicsCon. And Deb, you're always a great helper, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Hey, anytime, Kurt, anytime.
Hey, Deb.
Hey, Kurt. How are you today? How was your day?
I'm well. That was fun to see our work from a few weeks back. And it looks like we've got a few questions that came in while we were watching our work.
Yep.
We can start with Miss Reba is asking, is there a way to import our existing fixed assets? We need lots of help on this since they got messed up and we have been processing them via Excel for many years. Reba, you're not alone. Many people are still doing their depreciation in Excel. They really are, when they have a fabulous tool in GP. Deb, there's a lot of ways to bring those assets in, correct? I mean, we've got tools,
right.
Integration Manager, Smart Connect are a few that come to mind, but there's some native ways to do that as well, correct?
Right. It really depends upon the tools that you already own, right? So if you own no tools, no Scribe, no Smart Connect, no Integration Manager, you can still do it with just simple macros, right? I'm going to tell you, if you've not done macros before, maybe seek out a little bit of help. But and there's some samples, I'm sure, out on the web that you can follow. But really, to get assets in, it's just, especially if you've got already data there, Kurt, I would say do a good scrub, cleanup of your data, have your partner help you, have someone help you, scrub out that data, So you have no trail of that and just start fresh. Not a hard thing at all to get set up and start running on right away.
And there's no worry there that they've already tried once, correct? I mean, it's not a big deal.
No, I would, depending on what you have there, if you wanted to try to, save what you have, you definitely can. Or like I said, scrub through it, clean out those tables, clear data off of the fixed assets ones that are there, and just start again. But yeah, doing a macro, that was kind of some of us that are old, Kurt, us, that was how we did it for how long, right? And it wasn't the easiest process, but we got them in. With Integration Manager was just much easier to do updates, and same with Smart Connect. So definitely some good tools out there to help with that.
And there are some fabulous tutorials actually available online from other members of the community that have they can step you through how to build that macro. Or it may be a simpler solution than fixed assets, but it's really just a recording of click here, type here, and then we replace that information with information from our spreadsheet.
And don't forget to use some of the defaults that are already there for accounts and for classes, right? Getting those defaults set can help the asset stream come in quicker as well, right?
Awesome. Another question that came in, Deb, is does the intercompany feature need to be deployed? And while we were waiting to come on deck, I pulled up the feature list, double check on that one. And it is not in the add removes, but if you're not seeing it, it can be turned off in kind of the module setup within GP. So it's most likely there and needs to be lit up, turned on within the registration window where we can check things off the list that we want to use or not use. But the one that we do need to have a brief install on is one, fixed assets isn't always installed. Some organizations choose to skip over it because they're not going to use it. And the other one is the deferral tool. Both of those have specific add remove options within the install media to include or exclude them from your environment. Adding them after the fact is not scary. Perhaps talk to your partner, but or do it in a test environment. But it is not detrimental to your environment to add another feature by any means, especially if you have a great use for something that you already own. What else came in? What else?
Good job.
Well, I could have brought it up on screen and we could have looked at it, but it's just one silly window, so I don't see a good reason there. Another question that came in was doc attach. Deb, you pointed out that we can attach documents when we're in, fixed assets, inventory items, employee records, sales orders, all those areas where we can actually attach a document. And the question is, does it take a lot of room on the server to maintain? Granted, it is data. It's coming in what we would call blob format, which is a little more condensed than it is when it's in a structured format of a document. It will take space on your server, but most companies are already saving it as a PDF and putting it in a share somewhere, so that's taking space on the server. So if we're going to attach them, no need to have them sitting somewhere else on a file share. So give or take, right? Either way, you're taking up something somewhere. It does add to your SQL size, but not anything that we're going to get too shook up about. SQL database size these days is many times what I experienced as getting started in this industry. I see databases today that are 100 times bigger than my beginning years, and they perform better than the old small ones that we were working on early on.
And Kurt, when it comes to anything with doc attach, I tell all of my users that it doesn't replace imaging, right? I have had some smaller companies try to scan every invoice in and put it into doc attach, right? And that's really not, to me, what Doc Attach was intended for. Doc Attach is more on the master records. It's more on those key pieces that you may want to have a flow, whether it's into a SOP transaction, purchasing transaction, right? There's some flow capability there. But at the same time, on the Doc Attach side, I love it for journal entries. I love it for fixed assets. Those things that I know I'm going to be digging into a file cabinet, right? I'm going to have to go back and find. Someone's going to ask for some piece of information I'm not going to have. So, and besides that, it's being stored in our SQL database, correct? So it's got a backup. I have all that data where I'm not having to worry about if that file server does have an issue, that where did all my documents go? So
Absolutely.
Key there. But I mean, imaging, so many companies do amazing imaging products out there. If you haven't started thinking about what are you guys doing for imaging and paper storage and doc storage and flow, right? Getting from pay to post or post to pay, that whole process, I think that's really where a lot of companies, 2 years into COVID, are really spending some budget dollars.
Yep. Yeah, our other colleagues, in the session with us are also helping answer questions. They're doing a fabulous job.
Good.
Carol Livingston, great. She brought up that table imports can be used for fixed assets. Yes, done that in the past as well. That one scares people, but it
scares me as well.
Have done it and have done it with great success.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice there. Here's a good question, Deb. Jennifer is asking, I have struggled running a monthly subledger that includes all assets, costs, depreciation for the period with year-to-dates, etc. Thoughts on a good reporting or report to pop in that case, or is this something we would need to put together?
That's some great questions right there about subledgers and keeping your subledgers together at the same time of watching that GL, right? Because so there's the GL reconcile, which is my favorite inside of fixed assets. But you know what I have a lot of mine doing is I have a lot of mine just running the smart list, and I'm kind of a smart list junkie. Kurt will tell you she's a smart list junkie, but I'll go out and just run the fixed asset book, and you would be surprised on how much information is stored there specific, like especially if you want to just do a quick reconcile, do a pivot, everything is right there. So take a look at that one as well. And Kurt, I mean, tons of reports underneath fixed assets. And I think what I find most people doing is they'll look at like the category, but they don't actually take off and run the reports. They'll just say, yeah, this doesn't look like what I need. You need to run every single one of those reports, look at the data, print those reports out. Please don't print 5,000 pages at a time. Do it specific, narrow down, right, Kurt? He's going to yell at me here. But what you're going to find is there's information on those reports that maybe just has a bad name that you would have said, I would never have looked at this. Give yourself 10 minutes and say, I'm going to go through, I'm going to run a report. I'm going to take a look at everyone that's out there. And I'd be surprised if you don't find everything you want and more. Plus, don't forget, Kurt, about SSRS reports and Excel reports, because I know there's more in both of those as well.
Correct. And we've both been in environments where the Excel reports and the SSRS reports have not been deployed. And again, that's a topic for another day. It's a product that's owned by the customer, but not being utilized, right? So sort of like our gems that we're talking about today, it's those items that are in product that need to be explored. There's value there. There's value in what you already own. Just checking to see if anything else has flowed in. Miss Mary, thank you. Great comment. Document management systems. And Deb, I think you called that out as well. Mary would be a good resource on that topic.
Right. And definitely, if you haven't looked at imaging for a while, I promise I'm not a commercial here, Kurt, but imaging has taken such leaps and bounds with the whole, the ability to actually do the payments. I'm excited about where they're going with imaging and how they're helping customers right now that are really short on people, short on staff, and trying to, there's just one more piece that they can automate. So definitely good.
It's an area we're seeing a lot of traction right now as far as, what customers are interested in, asking questions on, one, utilizing, again, product they already have, right? So reevaluating what do I have? And then the second piece of that is, doc management, AP automation. And again, those lead into that do more with less.
Right.
From that standpoint, Reba's asking on the 2015. Deb, I think curious there is if again, what we're talking about would all hold true within that standpoint. Some of those doc attached pieces may not have been lit in 2015.
I think I just
all there back then.
I would say double check, because nothing else you're going to have your notes. I know you guys have a hard time remembering back to notes, right? Without the doc attached features, but notes were there and you could still do attachments there.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right?
Good point.
So, but I think 15 did have some doc attach.
Yep.
Seems to me that we had some there, and I know it's hard to go release to release and try to keep up on every single piece, but I would say take a look. If you click on your notes and you've got doc attach other places and you're not seeing it there, ping us as well. We're here to help. Anything you guys need. Okay.
Yep. Good information, Carol. Good job. We've got help. We've got help in the chat. So.
Yeah.
Everybody take note of that. Good information from a wise person. So
well, and I'm going to tell you guys too that if you're sitting on 2015, I'm not a pusher. Kurt will say she's really not a pusher, because all customers do when and how works for their companies and for their people. But if you're sitting on 2015, especially if you're paying enhancement, there's a lot of great features in the 16 through 18s that are out there. And this is a great time to get upgraded. If you've had problems in upgrades in the past, I'm going to tell you, 16s and 18s were really pretty seamless, Kurt. We didn't see as many issues. And if, most of those issues somebody else has already found now, so you're not working through them. So I'm going to say good time to upgrade if you haven't thought about it already. Okay.
Oh, when I was worried that we weren't going to get any questions, I had jotted one down.
He's probably getting us some hard ones, guys. I'm telling you.
It's not really hard. I think, we touched on some deferral examples, but Deb, I think, your real world examples are usually pretty straightforward and simple. Can you just pop back to that quickly? And,
Sure.
What's a good use on the AP side or the AR side for that deferral process?
Well, definitely on the AP side right now, everybody's probably trying to get everything moving for 2022, right? So we're looking at all of our insurances. If you haven't started setting them up as prepaids, now it's still a great time to do it, right? So you've got a prepaid insurance bucket that sometime is going to hit you, and you want to be able to spread that across many months, right? Your liability insurances. At the same time, on the receivable side, you may have customers that you say, okay, this sales event is going to last over 6 months. I want to be able to spread that revenue and be able to do it on the revenue side or the expense side. Okay, so if you're so Kurt, the key is they're manually doing them today, right? They know what they're spreading today over months to match the expense or match the revenue. And that's really the key. And you can get them started easily with the GL side, doing a GL entry to get them going, or starting them, if you're making a payable and you're starting to set up the expense, start it then. Easy enough to do. And I always tell people, start with the balance sheet. Much easier. Most people can get by with just the balance sheet side of it. Very easy to work with, and a great module that a lot of people don't even know they have. Every time we show that one, Kurt, at our event in November, people are like, they're at our help desk saying, okay, get this installed for me, because when I get back, right, I want to get this running. I don't want to have to worry about auditors and giving them the right information. They don't like Excel spreadsheets. They want reports. They will get those reports they need. They will see the actual entries. It's a great product.
And then the other one that watching our presentation, the comment I made of only having 2 intercompany relationships. Right?
Yep.
What if I have 15 companies?
Yep, just keep setting them up. They all have to transact back and forth.
they can be set up. So again, it's great to actually have that opportunity to basically, let's say, call it a redo, and retouch on some information that we passed on. So,
and I know, Kurt, you kind of you thought we were going to run out of time on the HR side, and I always tell customers, you can have your payroll at any outsource. Don't worry about that.
And Deb, we're running out of time here, so we've got to thank everybody for watching and thank them for attending DynamicsCon. This was great, and we had a blast putting this together.